Welcome to Secrets in the Shadows, where we delve into the most haunting and unforgettable true crime stories. Today, we unravel the tragic and deeply complex case of Andrea Yates, a devoted mother whose battle with mental illness led to an unthinkable act. This story takes us through the pressures of motherhood, the failures of mental health care, and the devastating consequences of untreated psychosis. Prepare to explore the shadows of a life filled with hope, despair, and tragedy. Let's begin. In 2001, Andrea Yates, a mother of 5, committed a crime that shocked the entire world, the drowning of her children. But Andrea's story isn't just about the tragedy itself. It's also about the warning signs, the mental health system, and the societal pressures that contributed to this unimaginable event. Today, we'll explore who Andrea Yates was, what led to that fateful day, and what we can learn from her case to prevent such tragedies in the future. Andrea Pia Kennedy was born in Houston, Texas, on July 2, 1964. She grew up in a large family as the youngest of 5 children. Her parents were devout Catholics who instilled strong religious values in their home. Andrea was known as a quiet, studious, and disciplined child. She excelled academically, graduating as valedictorian of her high school class in 1982. Andrea wasn't just a top student. She was also the captain of her high school swim team and a member of the National Honor Society. These achievements showed her drive and determination from an early age. After high school, Andrea pursued her dream of helping others by studying nursing. She began her education at the University of Houston before transferring to the University of Texas School of Nursing, where she graduated with a degree in nursing in 1986. Her hard work and compassion prepared her for a career in the medical field. After college, Andrea worked as a registered nurse at the prestigious MD Anderson Cancer Center in Houston. She was known for her professionalism and dedication, but in 1994, her life took a new direction when she married Russell "Rusty" Yates. Rusty was an engineer, and the couple shared a strong faith. Together, they decided to start a family and live a simple, minimalist lifestyle guided by their religious beliefs. They dreamed of having a large family and raising their children with those same values. By the late 1990s, Andrea left her nursing career to focus on being a stay-at-home mom. The couple had 5 children in quick succession: Noah, John, Paul, Luke, and Mary. Andrea homeschooled the kids while managing the household. At first glance, the Yates family seemed happy, but beneath the surface, cracks were beginning to form. Rusty worked long hours as an engineer at NASA, leaving Andrea to care for the children alone. Despite her growing struggles, Rusty believed she could manage and relied on his faith that they were living according to God's plan. After the birth of their 4th child, Luke, in 1999, Andrea began to experience severe postpartum depression. This escalated into postpartum psychosis, a rare and dangerous condition marked by delusions and hallucinations. In June 1999, Andrea attempted suicide twice in the span of a few weeks. She was hospitalized and prescribed powerful antipsychotic medications, including Haldol. Doctors warned Rusty that having more children could worsen her condition. They also strongly recommended that someone remain with Andrea at all times. Despite these warnings, Rusty and Andrea decided to have another child. Andrea gave birth to Mary in 2000, and her mental health spiraled further. She became withdrawn, often refusing to speak or eat. She told Rusty she felt like a bad mother and was consumed by religious delusions, believing she was leading her children to eternal damnation. Andrea's support system was fragile. Her mother and siblings occasionally visited to help, but they didn't live nearby and couldn't provide consistent assistance. Rusty tried to follow doctors' recommendations by having his mother stay with Andrea during the day, but this arrangement wasn't consistent. He continued to work full-time, leaving Andrea isolated for most of the day. Andrea's psychiatrist stressed the importance of constant supervision and a structured environment, but these measures were not fully implemented. The family's strong religious beliefs also played a role. Influenced by preacher Michael Warren-Yecke, Andrea and Rusty adhered to strict interpretations of faith, which discouraged reliance on modern medicine and emphasized personal sacrifice. Before we continue, Please be aware that this next section contains sensitive content. Viewer discretion is advised, as we will be discussing the tragic details of Andrea Yates's crime and the impact it had on her family. On June 20th, 2001, Andrea Yates was left alone with her 5 children at their home in Houston, Texas. Her husband, Rusty Yates, had gone to work despite concerns from doctors about Andrea's mental state. They had repeatedly advised against leaving her alone with the children, but Rusty believed that giving Andrea more independence would help improve her condition. Unfortunately, this decision would have devastating consequences. In a severely psychotic state, Andrea drowned all 5 of her children in the family bathtub. Afterward, she called 911 and calmly confessed, saying, "I killed my children." The police arrived at the scene to find Andrea in a catatonic state, showing little emotion about what she had done. The house was quiet. Some of the children had been placed on a bed after they were killed, but the majority of the bodies were found in the bathtub. When Rusty received the call from Andrea, he rushed home, frantic and horrified. At the time, he did not know the extent of the tragedy. The police report later described his arrival at the home, where he immediately began to break down upon discovering the lifeless bodies of his children. He had not been aware of how dire Andrea's condition had become. The police's findings and subsequent press coverage made it clear that the case was a combination of a deeply tragic crime and a larger conversation about mental health. Many reports highlighted the complex relationship between Andrea's untreated postpartum depression and psychosis and her role in the deaths. The press was quick to emphasize Andrea's mental health struggles, but also reported on the decisions made by her husband, which later became a subject of scrutiny. The aftermath was covered extensively by the press, and many outlets pointed to Andrea's long-standing struggle with severe mental illness, including postpartum depression and psychosis. The press also examined Rusty's decisions, particularly his choice to leave Andrea unsupervised, despite the warnings from doctors. In interviews, Rusty expressed deep remorse, admitting that he regretted not following medical advice and realizing that his actions, though driven by a desire to help Andrea, may have contributed to the tragic event. This case raised difficult questions about mental illness, personal responsibility, and family dynamics. The police report emphasized Andrea's confession, but also acknowledged her mental state, leading to a larger public conversation about the responsibility of family members and the medical community in cases of severe psychiatric conditions. Many viewed Andrea's crime not just as a senseless tragedy, but as a reflection of a system that had failed to properly intervene and support her through her mental health struggles. Andrea's defense team argued that she should be found not guilty by reason of insanity due to her severe mental illness, including postpartum depression and psychosis, which had been untreated or inadequately treated at the time of the crime. Her doctors testified that Andrea had been suffering from delusions and that her psychiatric state contributed to her actions on the day of the murders. Andrea herself stated that she believed she was saving her children from hell and that they would be better off dead, reflecting the extent of her psychosis. Despite these defenses, the prosecution argued that Andrea was aware of her actions and could distinguish right from wrong, meaning she was criminally responsible for her children's deaths. The prosecution called several witnesses, including medical professionals, to challenge the claim of insanity. The jury ultimately found Andrea guilty of capital murder in March 2002, and she was sentenced to life in prison. However, the case took a dramatic turn when the Texas Court of Appeals ruled that Andrea's conviction should be overturned in 2005, citing that crucial medical testimony had been withheld during the trial, which could have influenced the jury's decision. The appeal centered on the fact that the prosecution's main psychiatric expert, Dr. Park Dietz, had misled the jury. Dr. Dietz had testified that Andrea Yates had been aware of her actions when she killed her children, but it was later revealed that he had been mistaken in his understanding of the facts. He had claimed that there were reports of similar crimes that had occurred after Andrea's actions, but it was later discovered that these reports were inaccurate. This revelation led to Andrea's retrial. In 2006, Andrea was found not guilty by reason of insanity. The jury decided that Andrea's mental illness, particularly her postpartum psychosis, was so severe that she could not be held responsible for her actions. The court ruled that she should be sent to a psychiatric facility rather than prison, where she would receive the care she desperately needed. The public reaction to Andrea's case was mixed and highly polarized. Some people sympathized with Andrea, recognizing that her mental illness had played a central role in the tragedy. Many people were horrified by the deaths of the children, but also saw the deep sadness and mental anguish Andrea had been experiencing, which was compounded by a lack of proper care and support. Others criticized Andrea's husband, Rusty Yates, for leaving her unsupervised despite medical advice, believing that his decisions had contributed to the tragedy. Some media outlets focused on Rusty's role, questioning whether he should have been more protective of his wife and family. These discussions sparked a larger debate about the responsibilities of family members in dealing with mental health crises. At the same time, the case highlighted the inadequacies of the mental health system and the failure of Andrea's treatment. Many people pointed out that postpartum psychosis was an often misunderstood condition, and that Andrea had not received the level of care that she needed. Advocates for mental health reform used Andrea's case to push for better psychiatric care and more awareness surrounding mental health issues, especially postpartum depression and psychosis. Andrea Yates's case brought much-needed attention to the topic of postpartum mental illness. Her tragedy led to increased awareness about postpartum psychosis, a severe mental health condition that affects a small percentage of new mothers. The case underscored the importance of understanding the difference between postpartum depression, a more common condition, and postpartum psychosis, which can lead to hallucinations, delusions, and, in rare cases, violent behavior. The media coverage also brought attention to the need for better care for mothers suffering from postpartum mental health disorders. Many advocates argued that the mental health system failed Andrea Yates and her family, and that this failure was a contributing factor to the crime. The case led to increased dialogue about mental illness, particularly how society treats women with mental health conditions after childbirth. Today, Andrea Yates is still living in the Kerrville State Hospital, a mental health facility in Texas. Since her commitment, she has participated in arts and crafts and has shown some progress in her care. However, her life remains under the strict supervision of mental health professionals due to the severity of her illness. She continues to cope with the aftermath of her actions, and her journey reflects the complex nature of mental health and its devastating effects. As for her ex-husband, Rusty Yates, he has largely remained out of the public eye since the incident. He remarried in 2006, but divorced in 2015. In the years following the tragedy, Rusty has been criticized for leaving Andrea unsupervised, despite medical advice against it. While Rusty did express forgiveness during the trial, his emotional and personal journey has been deeply affected by the events, and he has chosen to remain private about his relationship with Andrea in recent years. While Andrea's case is a tragic reminder of the severe consequences of untreated postpartum mental health issues, it also highlights the importance of recognizing and addressing these conditions early on. Many mothers go through postpartum depression or psychosis, and these illnesses can be incredibly difficult to manage on their own. Family members, friends, and healthcare providers must understand the warning signs and ensure that mothers get the help they need. For postpartum depression, treatment often involves therapy, medication, and support groups. For postpartum psychosis, immediate medical intervention is required, as it can be life-threatening. Fortunately, with the right care and support, mothers can recover and regain their health. If you or someone you know is struggling with postpartum mental health issues, please seek help. The Andrea Yates case remains a tragic and controversial story. The trial highlighted the intersection of mental health, criminal responsibility, and the family dynamic. While Andrea's actions were devastating, the case also exposed the serious issues surrounding mental health care and the challenges faced by families trying to navigate these conditions. Andrea's retrial and eventual commitment to a psychiatric facility instead of a prison sentence raised questions about the role of the legal system in dealing with severe mental illness, especially in cases of postpartum psychosis. The public reaction to the case was deeply divided, and the media coverage both condemned and sympathized with Andrea Yates. The tragic loss of 5 young lives will never be forgotten, but the case has served as an important reminder of the complexities of mental health and its impact on families. Thank you for watching this deeply emotional and thought-provoking episode of Secrets in the Shadows. We hope it has given you a better understanding of the complexity of this case and the discussions it sparked around mental health and the justice system. What do you think about the role of Andrea's mental illness in this tragedy? Could things have turned out differently if she had received better care? Rest in peace, Noah, John, Paul, Luke, and Mary Yates. Be sure to subscribe, leave a comment, and share your thoughts on the case below. Please join us next time as we explore more true crime stories that have left a lasting impact on society.